All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Jim Ostrowski. I work in the in EGLE's Environmental Support Division, and I welcome you to our webinar this evening on it's a PFAS regional informational webinar for the Northern Michigan region. It's our fifth regional webinar we've done, and this one, like it says, is covering Northern Michigan region. So, got a few things I'm going to cover as the moderator tonight. In terms of housekeeping, it looks like there's a few people still coming in, and that's fine. We're just going over some basic housekeeping details right now. First of all lines are muted, which means that you can hear us, but we can't hear you. We will provide an opportunity to open up the lines later on, but for right now, they're all muted. Also, we are recording the webinar, and we will be posting a copy of the recording on the PFAS website, michigan.gov/PFAS response. The next couple days, so you can see it there in case you miss it or need to forward it on to somebody else. With me today, helping me out is Joel Roseberry, and he's going to be helping with questions, so you might see some responses back from him. Speaking of questions, if you have a question tonight, there's a couple different ways you can ask your question. If you'd like, you can type your question into the question box. If you look on your Zoom toolbar, you'll see a QA button. Open that up and you can type a question into us, and that'll come in and we will read it off when we do the questions after the presentations. If you'd like to voice your question, click the raise hand icon on your Zoom toolbar, and that'll show us that your hand is raised, and we will call your name and we will unmute your line at that time, and we'll let you know when you're unmuted. It looks like there are a few people who are calling in via phone. So those of you who are listening in on the phone only, meaning you're not logged in watching this, you can hit *9. If you hit *9, that tells us your hand is raised, and we will call on you by your phone number because we can't see your name. So that's how you do that. All right, well, that's all I have to say for housekeeping. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy Peterson, and also Randy is going to take over the slideshow. So Randy, I'll let you take over the slides, and Amy, you can present.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jim, and thank you for joining us, everybody, this evening. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about MPART, and Randy, you can go right on to the next slide if you are ready to go. Awesome, thank you. So MPART is Michigan's PFAS Action Response Team, and we were established under an executive order. MPART is a unique multi-agency approach that's coordinating the departments responsible for the environment, natural resources, public health, military installations, agriculture, fire stations, and commercial services airports. So we are in regular contact with these agencies, and we're also working with federal partners on specific projects. And then when we get into your community, when we have a PFAS site, as soon as we become aware of that, we're also reaching out and working with the local units of government. So in part, we believe in our coordination structure is one of the reasons we believe Michigan has been so successful in addressing PFAS, and also because of our data-driven, scientific-based approach. Next slide, please. So we're talking about PFAS, we're talking about the family of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and there's 5,000 plus of these compounds in existence today. They're unique because they have strong carbon-fluorine bonds, in fact, some of the strongest bonds known to chemistry. They act as surfactants, they repel water, oil, fat, and grease, and we began developing them in the 1940s. Go to the next slide, Randy. This will show a couple of the uses of PFAS. Some of the more familiar ones are probably the apparel and fabrics up on the top. So you think of certain rain gear and stain-proof carpeting. And then on the bottom right, we have food packaging. A lot of that in the past anyway has been treated with PFAS. And then you have the AFFF foam next to that, which has been used to put out fires in certain circumstances. So various uses of PFAS, former use and currently in use today. Next slide, please. So the reason we're concerned about PFAS is that they're widespread in the environment. They don't break down easily. Again, the bond is just super hard to break down and get rid of. Some PFAS build up in our bodies. Some PFAS may have health effects, and we'll hear a little bit more about that. There's a lack of information for many of these chemicals. Again, with 5,000 plus out there, we don't know a lot about many of them. There's also a lack of national regulations. Next slide, please. So we'd like to show this diagram for a couple of reasons. And for the people on the phone, what we're looking at now is a diagram showing pretty much how PFAS is cycling through the environment right now because we can't break it down. So on the left side of the screen, we have an industry using PFAS in the production of some say widgets or something. And in their production process, they're discharging their wastewater directly, potentially into the stream, untreated. Or in some cases, they might be discharging that wastewater to a wastewater treatment plant. Well, wastewater treatment plants were not designed to treat PFAS either. So in some cases, the wastewater treatment plants were discharging directly into the stream. Sometimes wastewater treatment plants are dealing with the sludge, and that sludge is going directly into a landfill. Biosolids are also a byproduct of some wastewater treatment plants, and those are being applied, to our crops. So you can see how we're kind of moving this stuff around. But this diagram also serves for the purpose of showing where we are sampling, because at each one of these sampling points, either MPART or industry or facilities are doing sampling. So back to the left, there's sampling going on at direct dischargers. Sampling going on at the wastewater treatment plants, especially those that were part of the industrial pretreatment program. Sampling going on at landfills. Biosolid sampling has been occurring. And then at the top right, probably most importantly, is the residential homes. And as soon as we get information about a new PFAS site, the first thing we do is reach out to our local health departments and to DHHS, and we determine whether or not there's any residential homes that we might be concerned about. Next slide, please. So MPART implements a three-pronged approach to looking for PFAS. And so we do surface water investigations, public water supply sampling, and groundwater investigations. So surface water investigations, I mentioned the wastewater sampling on the previous page. EGLE has staff that are out doing surveys of surface water and fish around the state. And if we identify places where the surface water is exceeding water quality standards, we will continue working upstream until we identify the source of that, and then we will take action appropriately. Foam is mentioned here because we have an opportunity on the MPART website and also through our pollution emergency alert system to report on foam sightings. And those foam sightings are used and incorporated into our surface water sampling plants. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the public water supply testing, again, the second of our three-prong approach. In 2018 and 19, we collected public water supply tests at all these different supplies that are on here. So we have community water supplies, tribal systems, schools and larger daycares. And then we did additional monitoring at a few of these sites, including surface water systems. So next slide, please. So this slide, for those of you on the phone, is showing a pie chart of the results of that PFAS testing at public water supplies. On the left are the 14 compounds that were analyzed for each one of those samples. 90% of the results for those public water supplies were non-detect. So none of those 14 compounds were found. 7% of those public water supplies had results where all those 14 compounds added together were less than 10 parts per trillion. 3% of the public water supplies had 10 parts per trillion total PFAS added together over 10 parts per trillion. And of those, there were 3 systems that exceeded 70 parts per trillion PFAS plus PFOA, which is a lifetime health advisory level. And those 3 communities got immediate assistance from MPART. We garnered all the resources across the various agencies to provide an immediate response. Next slide, please. So with the drinking water standards, there were no federal standards for us to adopt. So we established a science advisory panel, and they developed a report issued in December of 2018. And they basically came up with 2 major findings for us. The first is that the 70 part per trillion standard for PFAS plus PFOA added together was too high. And the other was that other PFAS should be considered above and beyond just the PFOS and PFOA. So Michigan then implemented a 2-step approach to this. We put together a science advisory work group. They came up with health-based values that then informed the rulemaking process for public drinking water rules. If you go to the next slide, please. So this slide shows the drinking water standards that went into effect on August 3rd of this year. The first column on this table shows the compounds, and there are 7 compounds here. And the second column shows the maximum contaminant level. And the third one shows that EPA's recommendation still stands at the 70 parts per trillion PFOS plus PFOA. So now what you have here, you have 6 compounds. In the MCLs, you can see the numbers differ between, 6 parts per trillion of one compound all the way down to 400,000 of another one. That just shows you how differently these chemicals behave. The reason the PFOS and PFOA are circled is that, again, those are now independent numbers. They're no longer added together. And if you go to the next slide, Randy. So here we're showing that those 7 MCLs don't automatically become the groundwater cleanup criteria because we had groundwater cleanup criteria already in place for PFOS and PFOA. When the drinking water rules went into place, the 70 parts per trillion combined was no longer in effect for groundwater cleanup criteria. That criteria dropped down to 8 parts per trillion PFOA and 16 parts per trillion PFOS. So now all it takes to become an MPART site is one groundwater monitoring well exceeding either the 8 or the 16. Okay, so we're talking about that because it's important as to how we define a PFAS site. Final point I'll make also is that rulemaking is going to be necessary for us to turn those other 5 MCLs into groundwater cleanup criteria. Next slide, please. So with all of that, so the groundwater investigations that we've done so far have resulted in all the sites shown on this map. There's 99 of the sites that are shown in purple that exceeded the original groundwater cleanup criteria of the 70 parts per trillion of the PFOS and PFOA added together. Since then, since August 3rd, when the new groundwater cleanup criteria went into effect, we've added 49 additional sites. On the day of August 3rd, we actually went from 99 to 138 sites. And since August 3rd, we've actually added 10 more sites. So we will continue prioritizing our groundwater investigations based on known or suspected sources, and obviously the potential for exposure to those. And again, our primary goal is protecting the drinking water pathway. Next slide, please. Last thing I'll mention is the Citizen Advisory Workgroup. This is an arm of the MPART structure, very important process for us. Now, this consists of residents from impacted communities, and their key charges are to recommend how to engage and empower communities and recommend to MPART how to educate the general public. This group meets the second Tuesday of each month from 6 to 7:30. If anybody is in an impacted community and would like to join this group, just reach out to me or to Steve Sliver, the Executive Director of MPART. And with that, I will turn it over. Next slide, please. And now for Puneet, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Puneet Vij, and I'm a toxicologist with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Next slide, please. In this slide, I'll talk about the role of MDHHS and local public health. Our primary role is to understand the health concerns facing the community. We closely work with EGLE and other agencies to investigate these PFAS sites. With EGLE, we develop a plan to investigate and address health risks where EGLE leads the site investigation and MDHHS and local health department leads the public health planning and response. We also evaluate PFAS exposures to residents in the community and recommend any public health action as needed. Next slide, please. As there are many applications of PFAS, this slide explains different routes of PFAS exposure. The most significant route of exposure is ingestion, which is mostly through drinking PFAS contaminated water. It can also be through eating fish caught from a contaminated water body, as PFAS tend to bioaccumulate in fish. And when the levels of PFAS in fish are concerning, we issue a do not eat fish advisory. Other routes of exposure include incidental swallowing of PFAS contaminated soil or dust, eating food out of packaging materials that contains PFAS, and use of consumer products that contains PFAS. The research is still ongoing, but the current science indicates that skin contact with PFAS is not typically a concern, as these chemicals are not easily absorbed through the skin. Next slide, please. PFAS are present in a wide variety of consumer products, and you can tell from the enhanced data shown here that PFAS is present in nearly 98% of the US population. NHANES is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey conducted by Center of Disease Control and Prevention, which is CDC, between the years 2000 and 2014. Due to industry and regulatory concerns about the potential health and environmental impacts, PFOA and PFOS were phased out in the US in early 2000s, and the blood level too dropped significantly. As you can see in this graph, the green line represents blood levels of PFOS. And you can see the trend, how the levels have come down over the years. But people may still be exposed to other PFAS or the replacements, which we do not know a lot about. Next slide, please. Most of what we know about the toxicity of PFAS comes from studies of two specific compounds, PFOA and PFOS. Adverse health effects have been established in epidemiological and laboratory animal model studies for these PFAS chemicals. This slide provides some of the adverse health effects in humans associated with higher PFAS exposure from these epidemiological studies, which includes lowering a woman's chance of getting pregnant, increasing the chance of high blood pressure in pregnant women, increasing the chance of thyroid disease, increasing cholesterol levels, changing immune response, and increased chances of cancer, especially kidney and testicular cancers. I will give it back to Randy. Thank you.
Are you there, Randy? We can see your slides, but you might need to unmute yourself there. So we'll just hold on a second here and let Randy get his slides set up. Randy, if you're having trouble finding your Zoom toolbar, you might just want to stop the share for a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you. Yep.
Sorry. Man, it's been one of those days. I'm sorry about that. All right.
All right, good.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for attending. Appreciate you taking the time out. My name is Randy Roth. I am the District Supervisor for EGLE's Remediation and Redevelopment Division at the Gaylord office. I'm also the PFAS Regional Lead for the Gaylord District. And also on the line tonight, we have Steve Kittler. He is the Cadillac Regional PFAS Lead. He is also the Supervisor for RRD in Cadillac. And in the UP, we have Tom Asmus. He is a District Supervisor and also the PFAS Regional Lead for the UP. These are the 5 sites that we're going to talk about tonight. We've got one in Cadillac, that's the Glens Sanitary Landfill. 2 in Grayling, the Grayling Wastewater Treatment Facility Discharge Fields, Montmorency Osceola Alpena Landfill, and then finally 2 up in Marquette, which is the City of Manistique Landfill, and the Great Lakes Pulp Company Landfill. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Staley, who will talk about Glens Sanitary Landfill. Jim?
All right, very good. Can you hear me, Randy? Am I coming through okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, yeah, as Randy indicated, my name is Jim Staley. I work for the Materials Management Division for EGLE, based out of the Cadillac District office, and I'm going to be talking about the Glens Sanitary Landfill. Next slide, please, Randy. So Glens Landfill is located at 518 M72 West in Maple City in Leelanau County. Based on the presence of known groundwater impacts at the landfill, EGLE requested that select groundwater wells be sampled for PFAS constituents. The landfill was very receptive to conducting the sampling, and they voluntarily did so on October 15th and 17th of 2019. Next slide, please. So this map shows a general layout of the landfill. You can see in red the wells that were sampled. The blue arrow shows which way groundwater flows beneath the site. Groundwater flows easterly. As far as results go, so F22 is an upgradient well. Basically, this well is sampled to tell us if there's anything coming on site from upgrading of the landfill or off site. In this well, the upgradient well did not detect any concentrations of PFAS. F19, which is the closest downgradient well to the landfill. At this location, we had a PFOA concentration of 9.6 parts per trillion, which exceeds the criteria of 8 parts per trillion. Next slide, please. Moving further down gradient, well F103. This is located at the property boundary. And at this location, PFOA concentrations were below criteria. And then moving off-site, which is actually state of Michigan owned property, they sampled well F21D. And at this location, PFOA was not detected. So based on these results, we know the extent of the PFOA impacts at the site. It's limited to the site property. And as a result, residential well sampling is not anticipated at this time. Next slide, please, Randy. With that, I will turn it over to Tom Burdinsky to talk about the Grayling Wastewater Treatment Facility discharge fields.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Tom Burdinsky, and I'm in EGLE's Water Resources Division, and I'll be giving you a quick overview of the Grayling Wastewater Treatment Facility discharge fields. Next slide. The City of Grayling operates the Grayling Wastewater Treatment Facility located at 2926 Milliken Drive in Grayling, Michigan. The wastewater treatment facility provides treatment of sanitary sewage for the City of Grayling. Next picture. And we can thank Google Earth for these pictures. Oh, great, my phone's ringing right now. Sorry about that. The wastewater treatment facility is approximately 35-acre wastewater treatment system that went into operation in 1990. The wastewater treatment facility includes 5 wastewater lagoons that are lined with a PVC membrane underlain by a geosynthetic clay liner. The membrane and the liner prevent the wastewater in the lagoons from leaking into the groundwater. The wastewater lagoons discharge to irrigation fields approximately 145 acres in size and 3/4 of a mile east of the wastewater treatment facility at the south end of Industrial Street. And Randy's circling those for you. The irrigation fields provide filtration of the stabilized wastewater before it discharges to the groundwater. The irrigation fields have monitoring wells that are sampled biannually in accordance with a groundwater discharge permit issued by EGLE's Water Resources Division. Sampling measures the effectiveness of the wastewater treatment facility. The results of the analyses are submitted to Water Resources Division as required. And historically, analyses required by groundwater discharge permits have not included PFAS, as these are emerging pollutants. Next slide. So sanitary sewers collect sewage from homes and businesses in the City of Grayling and the Grayling Army Airfield. Many of Grayling's sanitary sewers are older clay pipes with seams that were initially coated in tar. This tar breaks down over time and it results in a permeable piping. In some locations, these pipes may be below the groundwater table during periods of high groundwater, for example, the spring and the fall, or even all year round in low-lying areas such as those near the Osceola River. In many areas of downtown Grayling, the groundwater is known to have PFAS concentrations exceeding the groundwater cleanup criteria. Next slide. Due to the possibility of PFAS in the groundwater infiltrating into the sanitary sewers, the possibility of other unidentified sources of PFAS discharging into the sewers, and a foam complaint on Schellenberger Lake in the past, EGLE decided to sample 2 monitoring wells down gradient of Grayling's spray irrigation fields as an initial screening with the permission of the city. And Randy's highlighting those right now. Shallow groundwater flows north toward Schellenberger Lake, while the deeper groundwater aquifer is estimated to flow in a more northeasterly direction. The 2 wells were chosen based on their position between the midpoint of the irrigation fields and Schellenberger Lake and are approximately 25 feet deep. The wells are shown in red near the middle of the slide, and you can see Schellenberger Lake under the blue text near the top there. All right, next slide. The sampling results identified PFOA, PFOS, and other PFAS compounds in the 2 groundwater monitoring wells down gradient of the spray irrigation fields. PFOA and PFOS were identified at concentrations exceeding the newly adopted Part 201 drinking water cleanup criteria for PFOA and PFOS at 8 parts per trillion and 16 parts per trillion, respectively. The results for monitoring well 13 are 45.9 for PFOA and 11 for PFAS. The results for monitoring well 16 are 16 parts per trillion for PFOA and 43.4 for PFOS. Next slide. Excuse me. So EGLE is working with the City of Grayling Department of Public Works on a sampling plan to identify potential PFAS sources discharging or infiltrating via leaks into the sanitary sewer system. EGLE is also developing a down gradient sampling plan based on groundwater flow direction, which may include wells at Camp Osceola, residential wells, and possibly Schellenberger Lake and wetland if warranted. EGLE will work with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the local health department to determine if residential wells need to be sampled. Sampling plans are expected to be developed and sampling initiated this fall. And that's the last slide. So on to John.
This is John Zolga. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. I'm John Azoga with the Materials Management Division of EGLE. I'm the inspector and engineer overseeing the Mount Renzi, Osceola, Alpena Solid Waste Authority landfill. Next slide. Landfill is located at 6571 Landfill Road near Atlanta. This is south of Atlanta, several miles. The landfill's been there since the early 70s. Based on a history of the landfills, portions of it were unlined in the early 80s and early 90s. We requested the landfill to proceed with sampling select wells for PFAS parameters, where the landfill volunteered to sample, and that was conducted last fall in 2019. The area of impact concern at the landfill has a groundwater flow direction that is in a northeast direction leaving the landfill. Randy, next slide. The yellow arrows more or less shows the direction of groundwater flow leaving the landfill. As part of sampling, 6 monitor wells were sampled, one being the up gradient well to see if there was offsite impacts. That well was non-detect for PFAS compounds. One well, MW401 in red, directly down gradient of the historic landfill area, detected 8.5 parts per trillion PFOA, which now with the new criteria exceeds the 8 parts per trillion criteria for PFOA. Next slide. Based on the detection of the PFOA compound, EGLE requested a landfill to do additional investigative wells, which were installed this summer, being M606 and M607. They are directly down gradient of the one well that had the detection at the landfill. Currently, we are awaiting the results of the sampling of those wells. It is anticipated in October, next month we'll have that. Based on the findings of those wells, we will confer with the health department if there is a need to sample wells that are residential wells that are located further down gradient. This decision will be based on the data from that sampling. Next, that's it for me. Next is up is Mary Ann St. Antone. She is our geologist overseeing the city of Manistique landfill in Schoolcraft County in the Upper Peninsula.
Is my audio okay?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I'm Mary Ann St. Antoine, and I'm with Materials Management Division out of the Marquette District Office. And the city of Manistique landfill in Schoolcraft County operated in the days before they had regulations. And so it was unlined. Next slide, please. It's located 13 miles north of Manistique on the west side of M94. And it had known impacts to groundwater of volatiles and different contaminants that because the landfill was unlined, And also because what went into the landfill, back in the day, there were no regulations concerning hazardous waste. Things like dry cleaners and mechanics most likely went into the landfill. So based on that, there had been unknown contaminants in the landfill, and there were impacts to the groundwater. EGLE requested that the city of Manistique sample for PFAS, and the city of Manistique willingly did that. So groundwater flows to the west-southwest in Manistique, city Manistique landfill towards the Sturgeon Hole Creek, and there's a wetland on the west-southwest. Yes, thank you. Next slide, please. So the city of Manistique voluntarily collected groundwater samples at, you can't really see real well, but MW 4, 7, and 9 on July 30th in 2019. So all of them tested good, except groundwater at MW 7 was found to contain PFOA at 14 parts per trillion, which exceeds the current PFOA criteria of 8 parts per trillion. And you can see here too, the yellow arrow is the direction of groundwater flow, and the red square is circling the dot. That's our monitoring well 7. And all these other green squares encasing the other wells that came clean. Next slide. So because we had one well with high PFOA, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't going off-site. So we requested that groundwater at these down gradient monitoring wells, or sentinel wells 7B, MLS 7B and MLS 7C, to be sampled. And again, the city of Manistee did it willingly. And there was no PFAS found in these down gradient wells. So that was good news. We didn't do any residential well sampling for PFAS because the down gradient monitoring wells didn't contain any PFAS. So it indicates there's been no impact to the wetland or the Sturgeon Hole Creek or drinking water wells. So that was good news. It hasn't left site. Next slide, please. Another site that I oversee is the Great Lakes Pulp Company landfill in Menominee County. Next slide, please. So the Great Lakes Pulp Company is, as a crow flies, it's located about 7 miles north, but takes about 10 miles to get there by road. And the landfill took in recycled de-inked paper pulp waste. And they were recycled paper pulp made from recycles. So this gave us, could be suspect because they used to use things like copy paper. You think of it as being slippery, and food wrappers and ink that contained hazardous chemicals. They no longer do, but they did well. The Great Lakes Pulp Company was in operation from 1996 to around 2016. So EGLE requested that Resolute Forest Products, which is the parent company of Great Lakes Pulp, sample the landfill for PFAS because of what was in the landfill and because of historical impacts to the groundwater. And there were also down gradient drinking water wells within a half a mile of the landfill. Next slide, please. So on May 18th, Great Lakes Pulp collected groundwater samples at select wells, 4 monitoring wells. And again, you can see the 2 wells that are in green, MW212 and MW201, the up gradient wells were non-detect for PFAS, but the down gradient ones, MW202 and MW204, And this is the direction of the groundwater flow here is east-southeast. And you can see that, so those are down gradient. And the results came in at PFOA concentrations at MW202 was 230 parts per trillion, and at MW204 was 1,200 parts per trillion. And it exceeded the criteria for PFOA, which is currently at 8 parts per trillion. These were pretty high and they were kind of surprising. Next slide, please. So we requested that Great Lakes Pulp resample some surface water, and because it has a wetland and a creek that are directly down gradient, and some other down gradient wells and side gradient wells all along the east southeast side of the landfill, which is in progress. And on August 27th, EGLE's contractor sampled residential wells that were directly down gradient east-southeast from the landfill. And we have had some results back from them. They sampled one residential drinking well, and they sampled the creek, it doesn't have a name, a drainage ditch in 2 places. So we got results back on the drainage ditch, but not on the residential wells. And the total PFAS on one of the sites on the drainage ditch, and it's where it crosses 577, was non-detect. In another sample, it came back total PFOS as 1.82 and total PFOA as 6 parts per trillion. So those are both under the MCLs for drinking water for PFOA and PFOS. Next slide, please. I guess that's all. I'll turn it back over to Randy.
Yeah, I'll take it here, Mary Ann. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just want to show folks that on the slide right now is the contacts for the people that you heard from tonight. As Jim indicated, this is being recorded, so if you need those, you can reach out to us or look at the slide presentation later. And if I can get back on the right screen again, there we go. And this is the district health departments. These are all health departments that we work with regularly when we're dealing with the PFAS as well as other environmental issues. And I believe, Jim, it's your turn.
All right, thanks, Randy. I'm gonna bring it back to me here. Bring my slide back up because now we're at the time for questions. While I'm getting myself set up here, want to let people know that in your chat box, I did send out a couple links that you might find helpful. So you might want to check those out. Just to remind everybody about questions. I mean, we've got plenty of time tonight for questions, and we've got 16 experts who are on the line from 3 different agencies here to help you get your questions answered. So please type them in. If you use the QA button on your Zoom toolbar, you can type in a question. If you click the raise hand icon, it'll raise your hand and we'll call on you and we'll unmute your mic. For those of you that are on the phone only who called in, if you hit the *9 button, again, that's *9, that'll show us that your hand is raised and we will call on you that way. So Randy, we did get a question that came in a little earlier, and the person's asking if they can get an update on Pellston. So is that something you can do, or do you have someone else there?
Since we have time, I don't see any other hands up right now. And if you don't have any other questions, Pellston, the Emmett County received their final paperwork for approval of a $250,000 grant through MDOT to work on PFAS on site. That was finalized, I think, just last week. They're wrapping up their final work plan, which we've already looked at twice and approved. We hope to talk with the county in another week or so and get a schedule from them when they will start doing their on-site sampling. We are still collecting residential well samples as they come in. If you get on the MPART website and look at the Pellston site, I believe those maps were just updated Tuesday or Wednesday.
All right, thanks, Randy. Well, I've had a couple people raise their hand and pull their hand back down again. So I don't know if you're trying to raise your hand or not, but if you thought you had your hand raised, it just went back down. And I just want to remind people that also, if you go, I've sent a link out on this, but on the PFAS website, michigan.gov/PFAS response, if you look under investigations, you can find a really cool interactive map. You can find updates on all the different PFAS sites and investigations we got going on. You can look by county or search by site. So that's be a good resource for you. All right, folks, I'm not seeing any questions coming in on my board. Oh, okay, good. We got a couple more just when I said that. All right, so we got a couple hands up. Bill and Connie are, all right. Bill, your hand keeps going up and down, so I'm not sure if you have a question or not. So, yep, leave it right there. Okay. So Connie Boris has got her hand up. So we're going to unmute your line, Connie. So hold on a second. Okay, you're unmuted on our end, Connie. Go ahead and ask your question if you'd like. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Good. Okay, for Mary, you're kind of comparing apples and oranges. When you look at the PFAS sampling results, the concentrations, you're essentially comparing ditch samples with groundwater monitoring wells. I would be a lot more cautious and not do that. I would really focus on groundwater sampling results. The other question that I have is, when is EGLE there? Are they present at any time during the sampling? Do you split samples with the landfill's contractor, or are you just depending on the landfill contractor to give you the results? Do you have a QA/QC plan that they need to follow? Do you approve a sampling plan? Because if you're not really taking control of this, I'm not sure I would really trust the results that you're getting if there is not some kind of oversight on the part of EGLE and Materials Management Division and our the remediation division. So
those are all, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, Connie, those are all very good questions, and I'm glad that you brought them up. So yes, they have to submit a sampling plan that has quality assurance on it. And some of the samples that were taken that we took at Great Lakes Pulp were taken by our EGLE contractor, because sometimes within the bureaucracy, it moves slow. So we have a contractor through AECOM that works on behalf of EGLE, and they take samples for us. That's who took it at the residential drinking waters wells, and also at the ditch. So part of the reason we take a surface water sample is just to see if it's migrated from ground, because these surface water areas intersect and of course are diluted with surface water, but the groundwater intersects there. And so we want to see if it's migrated to surface water. And as far as being on site, when they sample, many times, not all the time, but many times we are on site and split sample. And those are all real good questions. And I'm glad that you brought them up so that the public can see that we have a plan in place to ensure that our results are good and correct.
Do you split samples though?
Yes, we do sometimes. I haven't recently, but we've all been trained to split sample. And the last time that they sampled at Manistique, I did not split sample, but I was on site.
I think a real good test would be a split sample to see if the concentrations that you come up with PFAS are equivalent or close to the ones from the contractor.
That perhaps is a good idea. Part of the problem with PFAS sampling is that it's so prevalent and ubiquitous within our environment that there's a problem with cross-contamination. And there's many, many rules that you have to go through before you can split sample. You can't wash your clothes in detergent or use dryer sheets. You can't have leather boots. You can't use any personal care products like hand lotion or deodorant. And so the quality assurance and the sampling plan goes very in depth. And I agree with you that these are all important considerations, and I think that EGLE's covered those. And as I said, I haven't ever split sampled, but maybe we should.
I think you should. Really, I do.
Thanks, Ms. Boris. We're going to have to keep moving on, though. We got quite a few questions that have come in. So if you have more, we'll kind of come back to you, or if you want to type questions in too, that's good. I got another person with their hand raised, Bill Barnett. He's got his hand raised. Or maybe not. Thought his hand was just raised. If you do have a question, okay, we're going to unmute you. Bill? You might have to unmute your line over on your side. We'll have to come back. Bill, your line's unmuted now, so you can talk if you want to unmute your line.
Can you hear me at this point?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for unmuting me. I'm from Cadillac. I just am very interested in this. I see that Wexford County is not on the new list. We did have a school that was in the top 22 worst sites. We were like 21st at like a 44. And I didn't see that added. That's our Wexford Missaukee CTC Center. It's right next to Baker College. It also had a hot site. In between those two places on a well is our YMCA. We have the ISD hooked up to that as well. That is for babies go in there and developmentally delayed youngsters drinking out of bottles. There's a restaurant in the CTC. All of these things are down just a little bit from our Clam River. And our river has been our wastewater for our city has been taking in leachate probably for 30, 25 years from our Wexford County landfill. And of course, PFAS was never tested. At some point, they realized it was in there and they kept taking it for another couple years. But I'm concerned about the schools. We've had neighbors with a 6 on PFOA right across the street from the school. And a couple folks with breast cancer right there. One person died at age 50. She worked at the CTC and lived across the street, so she was constantly on that well water that's in the plume very close to the Clam River. I just wondered, the school, it was in the top 22, but it didn't meet what looks to be, it was over the numbers I thought it was, and it was certainly being looked at very closely by the state. And thank you for everything you folks are doing to get your arms around this. But schools are a concern, and the number of people there and the exposures. What's going on with the schools that are on water supplies that are tainted? And that's my first question. And if you have time, the biosolids I'm concerned about. They just did a big article in the Cadillac News. I thought the program would have stopped with the discovery of PFAS and the fact that our landfill was putting numbers like 600 or so going right into our city sewer department, and they got it down to just under 12. They were legal. It just was very scary, but the biosolids from the city are being taken out to the township farming community. We're not testing for soil, not testing crops, not testing the livestock that's eating the foliage. just curious about biosolids secondarily, first of all, schools, and when do they get more attention and some help from the state or pressure to move forward? I am, and right next to, and actually in the middle of all this is a soccer field with 700 kids coming. And I believe they've been taken off the drinking water, but it's just, there's a lot of people right in this area. And the numbers have been under the 12 figure that was looked at for water, surface water. But there's an affluent that goes into this Clam River, and it's been going in for years. And just curious about those two questions as it relates to a discharge, and could we do something about schools?
Yeah.
And how fast can we get to biosolids in the food of animals that are eating on top of this, or the soil or the crops?
Okay, well, let me, so you got two questions there. First question about schools, and there is a pretty, there's a school sampling program we've established here through EGLE. And I don't know if Ian Smith, do you want to talk at all about that? Are you aware of how that's working?
Yep, sure, Jim. So Wexford, Missaukee is so that is what we refer to in the drinking water world as a type 2 non-community water supply. Non-transient, non-community water supply. And as such, it is covered by the Safe Drinking Water Act, which means that the new PFAS levels, which recently were put into the rule, those apply. And that water supply is required to monitor to verify compliance with those maximum contaminant levels. So beginning in October, their first compliance period will begin in October and run through the end of the year. During that time, they'll be required to sample under the new PFAS MCLs. We're working alongside our partners. So I apologize. My name's Ian. I'm with EGLE Drinking Water Environmental Health Division. We're working alongside our partners over in the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to make sure that supplies like those schools that you mentioned are getting the attention that they need based on what those results coming in are as we move into this new world with PFAS MCLs. I'm not sure, Puneet, you haven't been involved in those discussions, but do you happen to have anything to add from the MDHHS point of view?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, thank you. So to answer your question, sampling has been happening and is upcoming. So we will be keeping an eye on Wexford, Missaukee, as well as other schools across the state. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Is there somebody who can address the biosolids question that we had?
Jim, this is John Azoga. I can address the leachate part from the landfill. The landfill no longer hauls leachate to the city. They have an injection well and have been using it for a year. So that source has been cut off.
Okay. All right. And I'm looking at our questions here on the question board. We got quite a few now. This one person's asking, unsure if this group covers Iosco County. If yes, any updates for former Wordsmith Air Force Base site?
I can take that question. Updates in terms of residential well resampling.
The gentleman got offline, Jim. He asked if we could reach him via email address offline.
Oh, sure. Yep, that's fine. I must have missed that. That's fine. We can send some information via email to that question. That's no big deal. Punito, while you're up, we did have another question that came up directed to you. Mm-hmm. This person's saying, Puneet briefed a slide showing decreasing levels of PFAS, PFIA from 2000 to 2019-ish. Is that correct? The reduction was without MCLs being in place.
That
And I can bring
slide
up your
shows.
slide, I think. I think I can,
Oh, okay.
I think it's, oops. Is it, I think it's this one right here, maybe. You can see it.
Yeah, this slide. This slide shows the blood level, how it went down over these years when the production was decreased, the production was stopped between these years. And this is, we are talking about the blood level here, which is in parts per billion, which is micrograms per liter.
Okay.
And yes, at that time, there was no MCL in place, yes. But the main thing I want to mention here is these are the blood levels we are talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going back to Grayling, the residence sampling in Grayling will be revealed when, and how will we be notified?
All right,
So
Jim,
who wants
I've
to take
got,
that?
yeah, I've got this one. The only down gradient drinking water wells from the irrigation fields, all that property is owned by Camp Osceola, and they have 11 type 2 wells and 4 private wells on that entire impoundment, and they own the property all the way to M72. We just got permission from the camp yesterday to set up a sampling schedule for all of their wells. They will probably be sampled in the next couple of weeks because we do have a crew in Grayling working on some monitor well sampling. Those results will probably take 6 weeks or so, and then they will be sent directly to the board and any impacted person that has a residence there at the camp.
Okay. Thank you. Going down here on my list of questions, what is offered to residents who test higher than allowed? And when are they sampled to be sure the fixes are effective? So I guess probably residential sampling.
Yeah, typically what has been going on is anybody that tests above the criteria is offered a point of use filter by the local health department. And they have contracts with plumbers that will come in and install those point of use filters at no charge to you. And they will also provide you with replacement cartridges of those filters.
Okay. Okay, just want to remind people, if you have a question, go ahead and type it in and we'll get to them. Or you can raise your hand as well and we'll call on you that way as well. Next question, when do you expect to conduct rulemaking to adopt cleanup standards for the other PFAS compounds?
Well, I guess I'll grab that one too, Jim. As a matter of fact, I just found out this morning at a meeting that they're starting to plan that process next month.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm looking down. It looks like we've got. I thought we had more. No, I guess I got most of our questions answered here. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it in. That's what we're here for. If you want to ask a follow-up to something like that, just raise your hand or type it in, and we'll try to provide you with some more information. I'm going to bring up the slide again that had the contact information, so make sure you get that. Can you clarify, Randy, what is starting next month?
Next month, RRD in EGLE will actually start the process of trying to promulgate new groundwater cleanup criteria for the other 5 compounds that had new MCLs on August 3rd. That's going to be a several month process. It could take a year. It just depends on the entire, there's a lot of public input, there's a lot of public meetings. The Environmental Rules Committee will take a look at those. But what I heard this morning was they're planning on starting that next month.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm gonna
Jim?
leave it up. Yes, who's this?
Hi, this is Sarah Bowman. I was wondering if I could also add on the Pelston update.
Yeah, sure, Sarah. Can you get your camera, or is it just want to make sure you introduce yourself there? Thanks
for the reminder. Hi, I'm Sarah Bowman. I'm a toxicologist in the Water Resources Division. Somebody was asking about Pelston, And I just wanted to mention that the Water Resources Division of EGLE actually just conducted some surface water sampling in the Maple River. And we also collected fish. And those results for surface water, we should be getting hopefully next month, because people were out in the field on September 3rd collecting those surface water samples. And this would be upstream and downstream of the PFAS site. So just wanted to throw that out there as additional work that EGLE is doing in the area.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah, for chiming in there. Is anybody
Hey,
else
Jim.
on our team? Yeah, go ahead.
This is Puneet from MDHHS. Just wanted to ask you if you can provide me the contact information for the resident who asked for the former Wordsmith Air Force Base site. I can communicate with him maybe via email.
Definitely will. So that is something that I got right here. So I'll shoot that email off to you, the person who had to log off. And again, here's the contact information up on the screen for all the site leads. And so you can, of course, call or email any of them directly if you want to ask them a direct question after this webinar. Here's the health department contacts. I'm just waiting to make sure we don't have any other questions come in, because sometimes there's a little delay between when you type your question in and when it gets into us. Okay. All right, well, I'm not seeing any hands go up, and I'm not seeing any questions coming in my question box. So what I'm going to do is start wrapping her up. So I don't know if Amy or Randy, did you guys have any wrap-up comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, this is Amy Peterson. Just want to reiterate that if anybody has any questions about any of the sites, the site leads are listed here. If you have any other questions, you can always reach out to Randy Roth and Steve Kittler and Tom Asmus, regional leads, and you can always reach out to me as well. So thank you very much for spending your part of your evening with us, and hope this has been of help to you all.
Thanks, Amy.
Yep, and I'll just add my thanks to Jim. We appreciate the questions and everybody attending, and please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you have questions. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. So up on the screen right now is the link to the PFAS website, michigan.gov/PFAS response. For those on the phone, again, it's michigan.gov/PFAS response, RESPONSE. That's their main website. It's the main hub. And so you're going to find a lot of really good information there on health and testing, all sorts of good information that you should be aware of. So if you haven't been to that website before, make sure you check that out. That's a good place to get all sorts of good stuff. Speaking of the website, that's also where we're going to put the recording of this webinar. So we'll try to get that up there as soon as possible. And you'll be able to find that right at the top of the website. There'll be like a banner that'll list where you can find the recordings to all these webinars. So maybe you missed the one in Lansing or Bay City area, you can watch those other regional ones as well. With that, I'll wrap it up.
One more question.
Oh yeah, did another question come in? Oh
yeah,
another question did come in. See, I knew if I dragged it out long enough to get some more questions. All right, so this might be a good one for Tammy maybe, from DNR, she's on the line. Is there any deer sampling occurring near the sites discussed tonight?
Well, good evening, everybody. You almost let me go to sleep there for a minute. There is no additional sampling for deer that is occurring that would coordinate with any of these locations. A couple of notes on that is that when we're looking at where we sample for deer, we're looking at those areas of really high risk with surface water contamination. And so we did sample in the Grayling area in 2018, and all of the muscle tissue in that area from deer was non-detect from the deer that were sampled there. We do have the do not eat consumption advisory over within 5 miles of the Clark's Marsh area that was based on one deer there out of 20 that was very high in the level of PFOS. And it's muscle tissue, but that deer has been really the anomaly for us statewide. There's been 138 deer that have been sampled and analyzed statewide. And of all those deer, only 5 came back with any detectable levels in the muscle tissue, and only one, the one in Osceola, was very high. What I'll also say though is that we knew that the deer had been, some of them had been exposed to PFAS, most likely in surface water, because there was evidence of that in both their liver and kidney tissues. So what that leads to is just a reminder to everybody that the state, the DHHS does have a do not eat consumption advisory for all organs for wild game. So that's your liver and your kidney primarily, because those are the organs that serve as filtration for the body. And actually that consumption advisory has been in place before we started testing for PFAS. And that was really as a matter of dioxins and PCBs that can be found throughout the state. So as a matter of practice, we have a statewide do not eat advisory on organ meat and wild game. Also, let me just say too, Jim, that if you're interested in the testing of deer that has happened in the past, you can find the reports and other information along with the consumption advisory on the Michigan PFAS response website. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tammy. All right, and with that, I think that wraps up our questions. So I want to thank everybody for spending some time with us tonight. And remember, if you didn't get your question answered or if you think of it later, feel free to reach out to those staff that we have their emails. Thank you all for joining us and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.